Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I am your host, Matthew Jarvis, and with me on today's episode of What Works Wednesday is none other than Brady Bassford. Brady, how are you today, sir?
I'm great. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me today.
It's my pleasure. You and I met. I was speaking at a conference for your Mid-Atlantic Financial Group, where you are both, and correct me if I say this wrong, you are both a financial advisor with your own book of business, but also on the management side, working with advisors in the greater DC region, correct?
That's correct. So I still have a personal practice. I partner with two advisors to try to bring as much value to our clients as possible. But my official title is a regional director within our firm. So co-run 5 states, mainly responsible for DC, Maryland, and West Virginia overall.
Well, I love this. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. I mean, it was fun to hang out when we were in DC, but I love that you have this, you can see it from both sides, right? So not only do you have your own practice, and we're going to talk about your practice and the grind that you went through to get to where you are, but you also get to work with these other advisors. And I mean, I get to work with a lot of advisors, but you get to see their numbers. Like you know, like an advisor could blow smoke at me, like, oh, Matt, don't worry about it. It's great practice. I mean, you're seeing this, you're holding them accountable for this.
Yeah, I think it provides, in my opinion, a unique experience to the advisors because from a coaching perspective, there's not many people that are in leadership at other firms, whether you look at like wirehouses or whatever it may be, that have the ability to be involved with clients day to day within their own personal practice and know what is working or what isn't working, and then being able to go back and provide that coaching to advisors. It provides me a little bit of a unique experience, and I hope more value add to the advisors day to day.
I love it. It brings so much credibility too to what all of us are doing.
Course,
well, let's take a step back. Let's talk a little bit about your journey. I think that was one of the things that you and I really hit it off on about. Boy, it was not like, I mean, if you guys are watching the video, you see Brady's dressed up sharp. He's got a nice tie on. He's got a great office, beautiful setup, great paint in the background. But it did not start like this. Isn't your day one, Brady, right?
No.
Like you went through a lot to get here.
No, it was a grind. I mean, I started in school in 2015, or came out of school in 2015 and started straight into the business. And, you know, at first, and I can talk about this, you know, more in depth, I was really good at getting in front of clients. I just didn't know what I was doing. So, you know, I was great at connecting with people, building relationships with them. But when it came to actually delivering massive value, I just did not have the financial knowledge yet, like the planning knowledge, nor the processes in place to go ahead and execute with clients efficiently. There was another advisor in our firm. His name's actually Andrew Brincaccio. Shout out to him. Who pulled me aside and said, hey, Brady, you know, bring me out on some appointments. Let me show you how to do this thing. And life honestly took off from there. It was awesome. But yes, it wasn't always sunshine and rainbows, that's for sure. There were some tough times. And again, you know, listening to podcasts like yourself or an individual like Kitsis and some of his guests, like really just kept the faith going for me and provided me different perspectives of, you know, what's going on in the industry and really, really helped me get to where I'm at today. So thank you for what you do, Matt, and thank you for everyone else that's out there in the industry doing these types of shows, because I hope you're inspiring a lot of people.
Oh, thank you. No, it's a lot of fun to be here. Well, and similar to your story, the ability to have someone show you, right, to have this guy come in your meetings and show you. I'd be curious if you remember anything specific that stood out to you. I mean, like you said, you just come out of college, you were able to get in front of people, but just couldn't quite translate. Like, what was he able to show you that you hadn't just learned coming out of college?
Yeah, so there's essentially when you're actually meeting with clients, it was just the process of introducing, you know, who you are, who the firm is, really how we can work with clients from a financial planning perspective, and really you controlling and running the meeting versus, you know, allowing the client to come in and essentially completely derail your process. You know, being brand new and never having that interaction with clients before, I didn't know how to lead clients effectively. And working with Andrew, he kind of pulled me aside and really showed me how to take a client through an efficient process. And as soon as I got that down, between being able to work with clients pretty effectively and getting in front of a lot of people, life started to take off. All I needed to do at that point was just get a little bit wiser from a planning perspective, which just came with reading a lot of books and listening to a lot of great podcasts, industry events, getting mentorship from advisors inside, outside of our firm, and just other people outside of even the industry, and just kind of getting their perspectives on the value add that they receive from their advisors, as an example.
Well, I love that. And it really speaks to, and this is something that I talk about all the time on the Perfect RIA podcast, is learning from those who do, right? And I appreciate your kind words for the podcast, and there's a lot of great information that you and I both consume. But boy, to have somebody sit down in the meeting with you, and I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about the process that you walk through clients. I'm sure it's evolved since Andrew showed you his version, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about that process, because it's so critical in a prospect meeting and really just even in a client review meeting. Yes, it's about the client. Yes, we're leading with tell me the questions and concerns that are top on your mind, but I've got to have a process we're going through. Otherwise, it's going to flounder and inevitably we're going to end up in a bad spot.
Yeah, and you know what? It has changed so much between when I started in the business in 2015. It kind of came with like this baseline, which Dustin Corrente, kind of brought to us from his experience in the past at Ameriprise and coming into to our organization now. And it's really just following the CFP process of really understanding, with the client, what their goals really are, and really for us to share with them how we work with clients, and then actually starting to move them along through our process, finding out a little bit of financial information about them, of course. But now we actually have been engaged with Sten Morgan, who you've been so kind to introduce us to, who's completely now blown my mind. And honestly, we're having to take that process that I've been trained on and I've used for now 8.5 years, and trying to figure out how do we reshape this thing, because from some of the work that Sten has done and kind of showing us, what's possible with clients, God, we were really missing out on quantifying the value with people, right? There would be so much that we would give away maybe in a first meeting, which is great. Like, we want to bring as much value as possible, but we were never putting numbers to it. And actually, from a self-worth perspective, I don't think we were ever realizing how big of a difference we were really making in people's lives. So shout out to Sten Morgan. I'm excited to learn more from him and really keep taking the planning side of things to the next level, which is pretty cool. So to answer your question a little bit more thoroughly, like rather than going through like this like fancy brochure and this wonderful how do we work with clients, now it's like how do I get on a whiteboard as fast as possible and start showing people some real value right away, making the meeting a lot more fun and interactive with them. And it's interesting because obviously we had that capability of doing it in person, right, on a nice whiteboard, and now we work a lot through Zoom as well with clients because of COVID, and being able to do that on an iPad or some other type of tablet's pretty cool. Provides a way more interactive meeting than when I first started in the business.
Yeah, it does. No, great shout out to Sten Morgan. He's actually scheduled to be on the podcast again in a couple of weeks.
Oh, cool.
And a member of my team recently was down at his office getting some training. I gotta say, since we'll make this a Sten Morgan episode, one of my biggest takeaways I got from Sten was, it's a couple, but one is Roth conversions, right? So it's easy to get carried away on Roth conversions, right? Like, what's the time value of money and what's this and what's the discounted rate? His was really simple. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, at some point, this account is going to double in value. Maybe it's a couple years, maybe it's a lot of years. If we convert it now, the taxes, let's call it $10,000. If we wait to convert it, the tax is $20,000. Would you rather pay $10,000 a day or $20,000 at some future date? Well, boy, I'd rather pay $10,000 a day. Okay, cool, done. Now the academics among us are like, wait a second, you're missing interest rates and inflation and time and blah, blah, blah. Nope. It was just really cut forward. Mr. and Mrs. Client, would you rather pay? By the way, then when their CPA comes back and says, you owe $10K because you're advisor to this Roth conversion, the client already remembers. Yep, but that means I don't have to pay $20K later. So
that's right.
All of this, Brady, speaks to the importance of learning from advisors that are doing. I've never read that strategy in a textbook. I never read it on a website. I learned it from another advisor. And you're obviously doing the same thing.
Yeah, and that speaks to if there's someone out there listening today, whether you're in your first year in the business or you're in your 20th year, one of the things I highly recommend is number one, like learn from the advisors that are at the top of your current firm, but don't be afraid to reach out to those that are outside of your firm. Like that's exactly how we got connected to Matt and Sten. Like it's going to really expand your knowledge and your mind. So I mean, attending industry conferences or just asking those that have been in the business for a while who else they know at other places that are successful could honestly be really enlightening to you. There's really, Matt, when I was just thinking about the comment you had made, when I look back on myself and I look back on the experience that I've had in working with advisors, I have found there's really like 3 different types of people, maybe levels of where they're at. You're either like a brainiac and you know everything about that Roth conversion, right? You understand the ins and outs of it. But you don't communicate it very well. You don't know how to maybe simplify that down to a 3rd grader, which Sten's really good at. Or secondly, you're really good at communicating with clients, but you do not understand complicated financial planning topics yet, right? And then the 3rd group would be the guy that maybe is really, or girl that is very, very wise from like a planning, approach standpoint, knows the ins and outs of that Roth conversion and can communicate it really effectively. Man, those people kill it in this business. So the cool thing is if you're in those first 2 groups, you probably know what you need to work on.
Yeah, or who you need to find on the other side,
right?
You're like, hey, listen, I need somebody in my camp who's the super technical side. My buddy Benjamin Brent, who runs a Retirement Starts Today podcast, one of the top podcasts, he talks about that in regards to taxes. He says, listen, I don't want to be the tax expert. I want to hire the tax expert. That's why he works with retirement tax services. So he says, maybe I could, maybe I can't. I don't know. I don't want to go that deep on it. I just need to have that resource.
No,
Now,
that's
Brady,
awesome.
something that you guys do a lot at the Mid-Atlantic Financial Group is you bring in a lot of younger advisors, right? So you have the whole spectrum. Advisors have great practices, crushing. I got to meet a lot of those. But I also noticed that you've got a lot of younger advisors. I'm curious things that stand out to you for the younger advisors that are listening to this, whether that's obviously age or time in the industry. What do you see are indications of ones who are going to make it and ones who are, for lack of a better term, probably going to wash out?
That's a good question. It kind of twofold. One is just that, you're showing up. I kind of compare this to school. When you show up to class every single day and that's all you did, you're probably going to get a C in the class. You'll probably get your degree. Yeah. But if you show up every day, you go and spend time with the professor, you go to the library, you study a little bit more, you're going to do pretty well in this business, right? So how I would kind of compare it to is like if you're just showing up to the office every day and you're doing what you're supposed to do, you're probably going to make it. You may not take it to the next level, right? But if you show up every day, you spend time with whoever your leadership is, or maybe a mentor that you may have in the business, you role play your meetings, you're spending extra time, from a marketing perspective and spending money into the business, even if you don't have it yet, you might be going into some type of debt. I mean, those are the people that I see it just like really, really taking off, which there is a book I could recommend to open your mind to what's possible, is The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. And it's a phenomenal book because, while it's not related to the financial planning space, it kind of just opens your mind to like, hey, if I could take my business to a 10X level of what I'm doing today, what would be necessary, or what are the actions that I would need to take? What are the massive actions? He uses that term a lot. What are the massive actions I would need to go ahead and put in place to take my life and practice to the next level? One of the things, Matt, when I see new advisors is those that like are over preparing for their client meetings end up doing really well. And what I mean by that is when I first started in the business, it's not like we have like when you first start, it's not like you have like a thriving practice that is just, you got like 30 appointments a day or something crazy, right? No. No. So what I had found worked really well for me is that if I had a client meeting coming up on this Thursday, I'd pull my buddy aside and I'd say, hey, whatever your name is, do you mind sitting in the conference room with me for a little bit? I got a meeting on Thursday. Here's the situation. I want you to play the client. I'm just going to go through this with you a couple times and maybe weed out what could go wrong in this meeting or what could go really well, so that by the time I showed up to the meeting, I've already ran it 2 or 3 times. And what that did from an experience standpoint is took it from running maybe 8 meetings a week to now, maybe because I've already ran that meeting once before, now I'm running technically 16 a week. So it kind of took a lot of the years of experience that we need to build up and crunched it into months.
Sure. You've cut your learning curve in half because you've essentially created a second set of meetings by preparing for your meeting.
That's right.
Well, I love that. And I like that idea because that's something you could do with another, I'm trying to think of a better term, but junior is not the right word I want to use, but another peer at your level, right? So when I brought Alex onto my team a few years ago, he came in initially as a junior advisor, now as a lead advisor, and something that we would do every week. To his credit, he would say, hey, Matt, here's all my appointments for this week. Would you just look at these and tell me anything I'm missing? If you had to walk into this meeting, what's something you're missing? Now, I enjoyed that as an advisor for a couple reasons. One, it let me just take a couple minutes and flex my brain on okay, what's something he's not seeing here? Was a fun puzzle to solve. For him, it gave him a real opportunity to see. But I think, Brady, goes to your point. That's an above and beyond. Hey, I've got a meeting on Thursday. I've got my notes. That's just 9 to 5 work. You're going to make a 9 to 5 living. But hey, I'm going to role play this thing through its entirety. I'm going to ask another advisor what value would they bring to the table, so on and so forth. That's the next level stuff. There's this tired cliche, right, that successful people do what everyone else is unwilling to do. And that's something I remind myself, all right, whatever it is I don't feel like I want to do, that's probably what I need to do to get to the next level.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. And for all of you that are out there that are in leadership too, I mean, from an executive level standpoint, or if you're running a team of advisors and maybe it's new to you, or maybe you're growing a team, don't be afraid to role play interactions that you may have with your advisors or other staff members as well, because maybe you've never had those uncomfortable conversations before. Maybe you've never had to coach another advisor before. Go role play those out with somebody. It'll put you in a much better situation.
Yeah, it's really hard to overstate the value of that. I was recently, actually just yesterday, I was driving back from dirt biking, and in the car driving back, I was practicing out loud a presentation that I'm giving for another financial group later this year. And I felt like a dummy. Like here I am, I'm driving down my car, I'm giving my full presentation, I'm animated, I'm doing the whole thing. I'm trying not to get distracted and take notes, like just make little notations.
Sure.
And it feels silly, but that's going to make me a better advisor. It's going to be a better presentation. And so, Brady, I think we can't stress enough, if you want to next level, whether you're looking for your first meeting or your 1000th meeting, boy, practice that puppy ahead of time out loud, transform your practice.
You know, another thing that, thinking about the new advisors, because I got a couple that are actually here that, I've started in the last 6 months or so. And
brand new, yeah.
When I started, actually, this is really funny. Since we're on video,
I love it.
This was actually my original CRM. So for all of you that may be seeing this is funny. Now, I have Salesforce, right? But when I had first started in the business, that's what I had. And I was looking back at it and I was like, someone had asked me, Brady, how did you get good at talking to people? And I was like, that's a good question. Let me look back and let me think about that for a minute before I provide you some coaching. And what it came out to be, and I don't necessarily encourage this to grow your practice, or I can't tell you it's going to take your practice to the next level, but it was actually talking to people that would answer the phone. So if you're trying to call people, who are some people that may be out there that are either, friends or family of yours that are just going to have a conversation with you? But what's going to be harder is if you can pick up the phone and call someone you've never spoken to before, but can have a high frequency pickup rate. So when I first started in the business, I first started talking with a lot of realtors and lawyers, because here in the DC area, there's a ton of lawyers. And from a realtor's perspective, well, a realtor is going to pick up the phone because their cell phones are listed online, right? And the funny thing is they want to buy or sell a home or represent you in doing so. So of course, I wanted them to be clients, but what I was utilizing it for was the experience of just talking to somebody about what I do. And we can role play that as much as we want, but when you actually get to doing it with someone that's not your buddy in your firm, it's a little bit different. So, I wouldn't be afraid to pick up the phone and call some people you've never spoken to before, but call some people that are going to actually pick up the phone because they have to for their business.
Well, that's a really great idea. I love that. Because like we said, it's about getting the reps in, right? So how else can you get the reps in? And we can use any analogy we want, right? Flying, exercise, sports, whatever it is. You've got to just get the reps in. And if you're waiting until game day, right? I mean, boy, not to be like a too cliched analogy, but so many of us, we go into client meetings like we're showing up at the Super Bowl and it's the first day we've touched a football, right? Like, I hope this works out okay.
Yeah,
no, we need to do those. We've got to do those reps. And I love that idea. There's people who have to pick up the phone. I used to, when I went to networking events, Chamber of Commerce things, which is a terrible place to go for business. It's a meat market. But I would sit in my car ahead of time and I would figure out what questions was I going to ask every single person. And I would have a little tally in my pocket of the number of people I asked that question to. And it wasn't a clever question, Brady. It was sort of like, hey, what do you think about the new mayor? Or like what, it was like the only thing I had courage to ask. And I'd go ask as many people, okay, I get 12 this time, 15 this time, 23 this time. And to your point, eventually I built up the confidence and the practice that I could ask more persuasive questions.
Yeah, but Matt, you know what that really did for you? It sounds like it probably laid the foundation and gave you a lot of public speaking opportunities or just experience in general, which now, I saw you live in person with our firm. It's speaking to hundreds of advisors. Like, you crushed it. A lot of those skills that you had were probably from that silly Chamber of Commerce, meeting that you attended and asked that question, what do you think of the mayor? So,
no, it's totally true.
Even when I was silly to you today, it probably laid a great foundation for you.
No, even at your event, which you guys were you're very gracious and it was a great group. When I walked in the room, I thought, okay, all right, here I am. All right, what question am I going to ask every person? Because there's temptation to just sit in the back. This, by the way, if you're doing client events or prospect events, there's this temptation. Well, I'm just going to wait until it's my turn. Nope, I'm going to use the break. I'm going to talk to every single person I can. I'm going to ask them why they came. I'm going to make some funny joke about why we're all here. And I'm going to use the same joke with every single person. And that's okay because nobody else knows. So yeah, you got to get the reps and you got to work the crowd.
Matt, and to that point, by the way, and for all of you that are listening out there that are looking for, some assistance and maybe bringing Matt into your organization, Matt, I've never seen a guest speaker do that. You went around to each table, said hello, introduced yourself, sat down for lunch with them, and you stayed the whole meeting. You were so gracious with your time, but it provided so much exposure and I think just unique conversations with advisors that would have never have had that opportunity with a guest speaker of your level. So.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for doing that. That's huge.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Well, Brady, what else comes to mind as you are as you're working with younger advisors, and again, we can talk about experienced advisors too. We all need help, no matter where we're on the spectrum. What do you think is the most common advice that's overlooked? So as you think about younger guys, or even us guys who have been doing it for a while, the advice that's overlooked that maybe we've heard a lot of times and we say, yeah, I know that, but then we don't end up doing it. Anything come to mind there?
Yeah. For me, it would be reading. So I
Mm,
wasn't a big reader when I grew
yeah.
up, but when I realized that reading equated to making money, I started reading a lot of books.
Yeah.
And, if I go back to maybe our conversation 10 minutes ago or so, I talked about maybe three advisors that I see in this business. The one that's maybe like a brainiac that knows everything but can't communicate it well, to
Yep.
the individual that is really good at speaking with individuals but doesn't know the financial information. Then the third, the one that has both and can really crush it, right? I think, no matter what level you are in this business, you should never stop learning. And I would say just like there's a number of books, including Delivering Massive Value, that should be read that can take your life to the next level and just provide you a unique experience. I can't promise that every chapter is going to do that for you, but there might be something in each book that you're like, wow, I didn't know that before. And now I have a different way of communicating something new to a client and bringing value to their life, which is pretty cool. If I think that's the most overlooked thing is just finding time to continuously improve ourselves. When you're brand new to the business, there's a lot going on. It's like drinking water from a fire hose, but you have to expand your financial knowledge because you're going to show up more confident in your appointments and you're going to execute at a higher level. But more importantly, you're going to deliver so much more value to the clients that you're working with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, there is just an incredible amount for us to learn. Brady, I'd be curious just for you, when do you like to do your reading?
Great question. So I do it in the early morning if I can
Okay.
because there's no interruptions typically. Or if I get like 10 or 15 minutes at lunch, like I have books surrounded by me. I try to keep different resources at hand and I can slide in maybe 10 or 15 pages. I think the number is like if you read like 10 pages a day, you'll do like 13 books a year. I try to do around two a month.
Hmm.
And one maybe is like very financial related, one might be leadership related as an example. And I find like the leadership ones, not only does it obviously equate to working with the advisors or staff of our organization, but we lead ourselves every day. We lead our clients every day.
Yep.
So both have, a huge impact for me because there's stuff I can always bring back to advisors or bring back to, clients on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that as an example. I just started reading Stocks for the Long Run, the sixth edition. So I'm pretty sure I've read all the prior editions
Okay.
because every few years they come out with a new one. And it's a
Right.
pretty thick book and it's fairly
Right.
academic. It can be a bit dry in spots, but already I've gotten so many takeaways. I thought, oh, great. Next time I'm in a client meeting, I'm going to talk about the stock market this way and we're going to
There you
answer
go.
bonds this way. And it's just like you said, it's one, learning the technical side, but it's also that's an interesting way to articulate it, right? Like that makes sense as a way to explain things. So yeah, that's a great reminder. Curious, any books that come to mind for you, Brady, that you say, boy, this is one of my go-tos, or this is one I just highly recommend, other than obviously my book, which you've already mentioned. So thank you for that.
Yeah, there's three, and two I've already mentioned. One is the 10x rule. I'm thinking
Yeah.
about whether you're a new advisor or you've been in the business for a while. One is the 10x rule because it's just going to open your mind to what's possible or make you just think a little bit differently about what could be possible. Obviously, delivering massive value because it comes directly from a very successful advisor. Thank you, Jarvis.
Thank you.
Right? And it's not from someone that hasn't done this business before. And if you're looking on how to structure your practice, how to work with clients or engage with people differently, it's a wonderful book to go ahead and study. And the last one that I would recommend that I actually just read a few months ago is called Your Next 5 Moves by Patrick Bet-David.
Really? Say that one again. The
Absolutely
next,
phenomenal
your
book.
next 5 moves.
Your next 5 moves. It's
I'll
thinking
write that one.
about,
Yeah.
playing chess instead of checkers, as an example. And it talks about everything from working with, maybe clients that you deal with on a day-to-day basis to working with people that, may be working for you within your organization. I think it really has done for me is provided just a lot of clarity on life around, what am I really trying to do here over the next, few years? And what are going to be my 5 moves that are going to get me there?
I love it. I love it. Well, that really transitions directly into action items, which is a great segue here, right? Because this podcast is about taking action. I mean, it's been really fun to have you on the show, and it's fun to chat about
Yeah.
these things. But as you know, both from your own practice and from leading other advisors, it's only the things that we act on that count. So it sounds like, I mean, action items that we've already talked about in this episode are, of course, reading 10 pages a day. And when someone says, I don't know when I will do that, cool, just turn off your phone or turn off Netflix or whatever. You've got more than enough time for that 10 pages a day. The other one I heard you say, Brady, was practice that presentation, both just for the sake of practicing it, but it'll cut your learning curve in half. If every meeting you do a trial run, it's going to cut your learning curve in half. Brady, other action items that come to mind that would really make
Two
a
others.
difference?
Number one,
Please.
I would just be self-aware of where you're at. You know, do you find yourself like you're very well studied, you got a lot of information in your head,
Oh, sure,
but
sure,
you
sure.
need assistance on how to have more effective conversations with clients? Go find that, or go bring someone into your practice that can do that with you or for you or complement you nicely. And if you're on the other side of that where you're really good at handling relationships with somebody, well, maybe you need to go hire a CFP or a CFA, the person that's really smart and can communicate some great ideas to your clients, but they may not be the client relationship individual, as an example. And the last thing is just seek mentorship. You
Yeah.
know, there was an advisor in my office the other day that had a conversation with our leading advisor for the first time. He's been here for 5 years. I'm like, hey, like, why have you never reached out to them? Like, go find out what they're doing. Go find out what works for them day to day. And that's my fault as a leader. Like, I should have coordinated that conversation at some point. But also, you know, don't be afraid to reach out to people that, you know, are successful in our industry, but they're not within our firm. It'll
Hmm.
really open your mind to what's possible and what other individuals are doing, which I think is huge. And that's why I'm on here with Matt today. I mean, just having Matt as a resource, or someone like Sten Morgan as an example, who Matt then introduces us to. I mean, again, this is just a prime example of being able to take your practice to the next level by seeking that mentorship.
Yeah, I love that. And don't ever waste those opportunities, right? It's great to look outside your organization, but also inside your organization.
Yeah.
It's easy. And I've been in those rooms where you say, well, I'll just talk to the two other guys I know. I'll sit and I'll read my phone, right? I mean, use that as an opportunity. Sit at a table with people you don't know and ask them about their practice. I was just at the Ed Slott tax training conference in
Oh,
Vegas.
yeah.
And I thought, great, there's great stuff to learn from Ed, and there really is. And I thought, boy, I'm going to meet every advisor I possibly can. How are you articulating the new RMD rules? What are you doing about
Wow.
this?
Yeah.
What are you doing on Roth conversions? I don't want to ask them about sports or politics. I really don't care what they think about that. Hey, how
Right.
are you handling Roth conversions with clients? Like, tell me about that. So I love that.
There you
Seek
go.
mentorship no matter where you're at in the game. Well, Brady, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you again for having me as a guest. It's really been a lot of pleasure. And for all of our listeners, until next time, happy planning.